Okay, so let's talk about exponential functions. Okay, now I'm going to give you a couple of tips how to complete any or how to be familiar with functions in general. Okay, first things first. You need to know that the f of x is pretty much equal to y. That's it. No funny business, no tricky part. That's it. And the thing about functions is, right, you need to be familiar with what functions are. Okay, so functions can be represented usually on axis of symmetry, which is my x and my y axis. And the most important thing is to be familiar with their names. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that, let's say for instance, as a baby, right, we get taught that if we see this number or this combination of a 1 and a 4, we know this gets read as 14. What about this one? That would be 12. This one, 10. So we know these things by just looking at them, right? The same thing goes for functions. If we see a graph, we need to be able to identify what graph it is by just looking at the picture. So I would recommend that first learn the graph's name and how it looks. Afterwards, you can start understanding what it is. For instance, if I look at this one, I know it's a linear function. Why? Because it's a straight line. What about this one? This would be a sine graph by just looking at it, right? No coordinates, no nothing. But what about this one? That I know would be an exponential function because it starts off very small and then all of a sudden shoots up, right? Now, they might give you the function, the f of x is equal to x with an exponent of, or 2 to the power of x, right? So what I like to teach is that we're going to create a little input and an output box. So let's make this our x and our y. So this would be considered an input-output box. So you put in an x to get out a y. Now, a general rule of thumb is, let's say for instance we want to use x which is greater than or equal to -2. Meaning that x can be -2, but it also has to be greater than -2. So I'm going to use this domain. And the domain is usually related to my x coordinate. Okay, so to make things easier, I know it can be -2. Greater than -2 is -1, 0, 1, and 2. Now, very simple. How do I find these type of values? Well, I can find them by replacing. We can see x is over there, and I can see x is over there. So what does that mean? That means I can just input this value into my function. So this is going to be 2 to the power of -2. But now I know to solve this one, I need to make my exponent positive. How can I do that? I can simply do that by placing it over 1. 2 to the power of 2 is 1 over 4. So now I have my first point, which is 1 over 4. Or where my x is 2, my y is positive 1 over 4. Now I'm going to go to the second one. I'm going to do the exact same thing for 1. So the f of -1 will be equal to 2 to the power of -1. This gives me 1 over 2 by following this exact same principle. Okay. So now I get a half. Notice how this thing's doubling very quickly. Okay, very quickly. Then I'm just going to continue by placing in a 0. And I know if I follow my exponential rules that anything to the power of 0 is equal to 1. Then I have 2 to the power of 1. What is 2 to the power of 1? That simply just means the constant, right? And for our final one, we're going to have the f of 2. So f of 2 is equal to 2 to the power of 2, which is 4. So to the power means, to the power simply means, let's say I have 2 to the power of 2. That means simply 2 multiply 2, which is then equal to 4. Okay. Now we have to graph this, right? And we can graph this by, oops, give me one sec. We can graph this by drawing an axis of symmetry. So I'm running out of ink there, so I'm gonna switch over to a blue pen. Actually, I'm gonna switch over to a red pen. Okay. Now, as I've said before, that this is my y-axis, and this one will be my x-axis. Now, all I'm going to do is simply, because I gave a domain where x needs to be greater than or equal to -2, I'm going to start at -2, which should be on this side, okay? So let's do that, 1, 2, 3, 4, and let's go 1, 2. So a quarter of 1, let's say for instance this is 1, this is 1 unit. A quarter would be over there. So now I need to make a little dot right over there. It's a small dot, you can't really see it, but you'll get the idea in a second. Then we need to go -1 1/2. -1 1/2 is a bit higher. Then we're gonna go 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 4. And as I can see, there's my exponential function. Now, one thing that's very important, right, is that you need to be familiar with that the exponential function would look something in terms of this. Why that's important is because we can make a common mistake of, let's say we graph a exponential function, we have a point there, there. We can clearly see how the shapes look or how the graph would be represented. But a common mistake would be to link these one with straight lines. That's not an exponential function, okay? We want a nice little curve like that.